Good evening, YouTube. It's Kev back from the Kev Baker Show. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all getting ready for Christmas. And a little cracker for you here because I've got a story about CERN, about antimatter, and me being, quantum Kev, into my physics, the geek that I am. I should be absolutely over the moon, right? They're looking at antimatter. Or are they? And it's all coming from CERN. And it says here that antimatter is a concept that oozes sci-fi, evocative of amazing engines, time travel, and most likely destruction of the whole universe. Or maybe it's a parallel world or everywhere around us type of thing. In any case, this idea comes to us from the laws of physics that predict that there should be an antimatter particle for every particle of regular matter. But if the two shall ever meet, there'd be a release of energy annihilating both. Now it says here the laws of physics predict that there should be antimatter. That's not entirely true. It's not that it predicts that there'll be an antimatter. It's that the math left over, they had to make something up. So they made up this invisible dark energy antimatter particles just so the maths would work. Am I questioning whether it even exists? Well, let's see, because it says here that there should be equal amounts of matter and antimatter produced by the Big Bang. And it says, how did everything not just explode or just vanish? Why are we even here? And to study this, they have gone to CERN. And it says, a new report from CERN in Switzerland confirms that for the first time ever, researchers were able to control an antimatter particle of the hydrogen atom, manipulating it long enough with lasers to allow for measurement and comparison with the regular matter hydrogen atom. Let me stop there. Wow. So CERN, not only have they come up with this anti-hydrogen atom, but they're saying they've fired lasers at it. They've had basically a little look, the shining lasers of this previously undetected theoretical thing. And it says, in particular, scientists from the Alpha experiment at CERN laboratory were able to hit the anti-hydrogen atoms with a laser to observe the light they gave off as positrons in the atoms returned to lower energies. Quote, using a laser to observe a transition in anti-hydrogen and comparing it to hydrogen to see if they obey the same laws of physics has always been a good goal, a key goal of antimatter research. This comes from he's called Professor, we have to believe him, Jeffrey Hangst, and he's the spokesperson for Alpha. Now, he goes on to say that what you hear about in science fiction, that antimatter gets annihilated by normal matter, is 100% true. And the greatest challenge in my everyday life. It says here, in other words, his test subjects would constantly disappear. So it says, interestingly, the researchers concluded that under the same test conditions, the anti-hydrogen atoms gave off the exact same light spectrum as regular hydrogen atoms. Well, wait a minute then. So you're telling me that the test results they're looking for are the same as the test results they would get from looking at regular hydrogen atoms. So how do they even know they're looking at anti-hydrogen in the first place? But it says here, it's long been thought that antimatter is an exact reflection of matter. Well, if it's an exact reflection, why isn't it just matter? And we are gathering evidence to show that is indeed true. If you're starting to think, folks, that I'm sounding a little bit cynical here, there's a good reason for that. Now, over my time covering CERN, I have been fortunate, lucky, blessed enough to have been joined by Anthony Patch, who I can say now is one of my co-hosts over on truthfrequencyradio.com. More of that at the end of the video. But I like to send Anthony links. He likes to keep me right, sending me stuff. And I sent him the story through. And Tony, being Tony, he is tireless when it comes to this kind of research. He loves it, passionate about it. This is what he is meant to be doing. You can hear that every time he talks. Well, he responded to me and I said I may share it with the listeners on the show last night. However, I never got round to it last night. But for you right now, I have got Anthony Patch's take on what CERN are saying is a miraculous discovery, the shining light of anti-hydrogen, blah-de-blah. Let's go to Anthony Patch. And I don't have his cool accent or voice, but we'll just have to make do with me, right? Quantum Kev. Assuming that antimatter, in this case, anti-hydrogen, can be produced or even exist in a natural form, here are my thoughts. Anti-hydrogen will cause a reversal of polarity to the laser passing through it. Well, if we pause there, and if we think of light as a wave, which it is, it's made up of a wavelength, lasers of a specific wavelength. If it passes through something, you'd expect it to deviate anyway. Now, you'd expect something to happen when you pass through ordinary matter, and then surely a reversal when you come out the other side if it was the anti of that. So it says, therefore, their claim of an identical light emission exiting from anti-hydrogen is false. An inversion of the waveform would result from the opposite polarity of anti-hydrogen or antimatter in general. Thus, by their own definition of identical light, they are wrong in their findings. This is a prime example of yet another experiment resulting in an alleged discovery. Then in reality, this is mere propaganda for the purpose of ensuring continued funding of the occulted activities taking place at CERN. Now, I'm sure the people even working on that experiment, they don't even need to know of some of the whacked out, crazy spiritual side of stuff that is going on there. And we're going to deal with the spiritual in just a moment. But maybe the guys and gals at CERN can put their lasers to better use by lighting their Christmas trees. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Santa Patch. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And I'm laughing because Tony last week on his show, he shared his, I would call it an alter ego. I won't say channeling because people will take that the wrong way. And it's a comedy character that he bursts into from time to time. And yeah, for that alone, even the physics aside, tune in to Anthony Patch. But we'll get to that in a moment. And I mentioned the spiritual side of things. And CERN for me was always like a gold mine anyway. Cool science, lots of woo that you could see from the symbology out in the garden. You've got Shiva, the creator and destroyer of worlds. You've got the 666 logo. And then this dude here, Patch, he comes along and blows my mind. He's telling me they're opening portals to other dimensions, trying to bring demons onto the face of the earth. It's built upon Apollo's temple, the abyss. I'm thinking the guy must be crazy, right? He isn't, though. He is absolutely on the money. When I first heard him on Clyde Lewis, I tell you, it was obviously some kind of divine intervention on my part because I had never appreciated what was going on at CERN. And this spiritual side of things has actually been dealt with or touched upon in the Daily Fail, one of the leading fake news propagators in the UK and been online the world. It says here, conspiracy theorists. So immediately they're putting people in a frame of mind that this must be crap. Claim that CERN has unleashed hell on Earth in its latest antimatter experiment. Well, as we just heard from Tony, the likelihood is they haven't actually done anything with the antimatter experiment. But it says here that in a paper published online on Monday by the journal Nature, the team reported the first cautious results from an experiment with anti-hydrogen. But this has been met with contention from certain religious groups, including something called Christian Truther. In an article containing many scientific inaccuracies, Christian Truther claims CERN is creating hell on earth by performing these groundbreaking experiments. Antimatter is the opposite of matter. It isn't physical, it's spiritual, writes Emily. Antimatter can be described as the opposite of matter, but not in the sense that it is not physical. Okay then, so let's stop there. That's quite a good point, I think. You know, antimatter is the opposite of matter. It isn't physical, it's spiritual. And I am no expert at this kind of thing, but I've always imagined with this dark energy, dark matter, antimatter being invisible. Well, it's not physical then, is it? If it's invisible. So I don't know, but I think there is a spiritual aspect to all of it that's going on at CERN. That's the main game in town. The science itself, they've probably cracked half of this stuff back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, because remember, military industrial complex, and they are well in bed with CERN. They're about 50 years ahead of us, folks. And the fact they're even telling us about what's going on at CERN, who only knows what they've really got going on. Now, if you're into more of this CERN stuff from a true expert like Mr. Patch, please join him from 10 p.m. in the UK. That's, now I need to work out the times here, 5 p.m. on the East Coast and 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Damn, I'm getting good at these American times. And then we've got, oh, wait for it though, we have got the Freaky Friday Christmas special. Should call it Christmas crackers, because the Woo crew will be picking random topics from the sack and we'll be seeing just where that leads us. But you can join us right after Anthony Patch from midnight in the UK, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, 4 p.m. on the West Coast. Damn, I nearly messed that up after saying I'd got the hang of it. You can catch all of that at truthfrequencyradio.com and add /chat if you want to join all the crazy maniacs in the Woo Cave, in the chat room. And you know, when I say they're crazy maniacs, bear in mind the word crazy just means different. And if I'm saying crazy means different to all the masses that are still programmed and plugged into the matrix, I wear my crazy hat with pride. So folks, I will catch you later on. Just so the maths would work, am I questioning whether it even exists? Well, let's see, because it says here that there should be equal amounts of matter and antimatter produced by the Big Bang. And it says, how did everything not just explode or just vanish? Why are we even here? And to study that, I should be absolutely over the moon, right? They're looking at antimatter. Or are they? And it's all coming from CERN. And it says here that antimatter is a concept that oozes sci-fi, evocative of amazing engines, time travel, and most likely destruction of the whole universe. Or maybe it's a parallel world or everywhere around us type of thing. In any case, this idea comes to us from the laws of physics that predict that there should be an antimatter particle for every particle of regular matter. But if the two shall ever meet, there'd be a release of energy annihilating both. Now it says here, good evening, YouTube. It's Kev back from the Kev Baker Show. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all getting ready for Christmas. And a little cracker for you here, because I've got a story about CERN, about antimatter, and me being, you know, quantum Kev, into my physics, the geek that I am. The laws of physics predict that there should be antimatter. That's not entirely true. It's not that it predicts that there'll be an antimatter. It's that the math left over, they had to make something up. So they made up this invisible dark energy antimatter particles.